Hello, everyone. So today we're going to continue to learn React. So just for recap, let me check if mic is working. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, mic is working. Cool. So starting at 3:46. All right. So let's start. So just to recap, last time we learned state and handling events. So state is that there are two different things that is very important, that are very important in React. One is props. So prop is property that is passed from its parents when they declare, when the parent class, parent component declare child component as an HTML tag, it can pass properties as attributes. State instead is a dynamic value that changes in a components, which should um, update the elements so that it will always trigger the rendering function. The rendering function is basically this whole function, like, the whole functional component. This is, the return statement is simply returning JSX code, right? So it is supposed to return HTML elements, and that HTML element will be replaced with the component tag, and then will be used to render HTML page. Handling events, you use the inline attributes and give it a function handle. So the example is something like this. So let's see what this guy is doing. So this is setting the state. And then again, when we use state, this was what? This was the name of the variable, like state variable. And this was setter. So you always have to use setter so that React knows that it needs to trigger the render function again. So again, this is the whole render function. You may think that, like, why this is, if, like, if this render function run multiple times, what happens to this? Like, because these two are registered to React state, because this is a hook function, right? If we declare this again, like, React will know, oh, this was already registered, so it doesn't do anything. It's just going to update it. So this particular function returns a button, and then you always have to be careful about this camel case attribute for React. You need to have a camel case attributes. And then this provides a function handle. So whenever this button is clicked, we're going to call this function, and then we're going to update this count variable using the setter, and then previous state is count, and then increment 1. So yeah, that's the basic option and basic, like, usage, and then you always have to import use state to be able to use state. Okay, so I don't know if you remember. So last time what we did was, oops, let me clear it. Last time, actually I created an empty project today for today's class. I'm just gonna grab the code that I did last time. So this was the last time code, code from the previous lecture. I'm just going to paste it to the one that I made, save it, and then if I do npm start, we'll be able to see what we did last time. So basically, I think we built a counter and then interaction history. So you can increment, reset it, increment, and so forth. Yeah, so basically this was using state where if you click it, it's going to update the state variable. And now because state variable was used inside the JSX return value, the setter, state setter is going to tell React, hey, you got to call this render function again because something has been updated. Now the React knows which component to update. And then I think I said multiple times that's the power of React, like the being able to update only the components that we need to update instead of the whole thing, instead of searching one element out of many elements. Okay, so that's that. The second thing that we did was briefly did was at the end of the last lecture was using array to generate multiple JSX. Multiple JSX tags. So map was mapping one array to another array. So let me give you an example. So let's get rid of this whole code and start over. And let's say hello, let's start with hello world. If you see this is the only thing that we get, which is fine. Oops. So before I actually start, what I'm going to do is to install a Bootstrap, because we've been using Bootstrap, and then we're going to use it for assignment 5 as well. So npm install bootstrap / save, and then we would have to import it, right? Import. How would I import Bootstrap? So one simple way to actually import Bootstrap is simply using, although I downloaded the npm package, what I'm going to do is kind of like old school way. So here, public. So here I'm just going to include Bootstrap that we know of. So I'm going to go back to assignment 4 if possible. Oh, this is assignment 5, but I'm going to just copy and then paste this here. And then it is actually hopefully it will, yeah, it should work. So if I save it, then we have to run the thing. Oh, it looks different. Cool. So what was I going to do? One thing that I was going to do is to create an array. let's say 1, 2, 3. And then what I can do is convert this function into JSX array of JSX elements. So here, let's create another function component. So let's say hello world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass, I'm going to get one property. Then return value is going to be h div, and then hello world. And then I'm going to expect some property, message name, maybe name. So probably it would be better to have an array of name. So let's say Sang, Jason, Mia. So here I'm going to generate 3 hello world tag based on the array value. So here what I'm going to do is array.map, and then this is the mapping function. So I'm going to get each item. So each item is going to be in the first call. So this function is going to get called 3 times because we have 3 elements, and each time it's going to call the map is going to call each callback function and then pass each element or each item inside the array. So, and then what I'm going to return is going to be another, like an item of new array. So here I'm going to say, what should we do? Maybe let's start simple by just creating h1 tag with each item, and then let's save it to array 2, and then let's put array 2 here. If I do that, I get an error. Use status defined, never used. Okay, so I'll get rid of this. Okay, so this array has generated 3 lines of HTML tag, which is this guy. So I can add maybe hello in front of item, and then that's going to look like this. What else can we do? And then here, like what actually we can do is create a custom tag, and then provide an attribute, which is going to be passed as a props. So I'm going to say name. So the reason why I use name is because I was expecting name in the hello world. And then item. And then what's going to happen is that it's going to create 3 different hello world tag, which is basically hello world name. Hello. Let's put this one here and put S. So we get this 3 tags that are generated from array. So yeah, and then the cool thing is that we can put many data, as many as possible, and it's going to automatically generate as many as the number of elements. And then you can have um, multiple attributes. So let's say maybe the second parameter count is going to be the length of the name. And then I can let's use len, and then I can use that inside this custom tag because it will be passed as a props. So I'm going to say props.len, and then if I do that, I'm going to get this length of each name. Yeah, so this could be useful to generate tag once you fetch a data, and then data is an array, and when you want to generate multiple elements based on the array, this could be useful. And then of course this could be complicated, right? Like, so let's say instead of this, I'm going to say gender, and then the array is going to be the element of array is going to be JavaScript object. So sang, and then gender is going to be male. So let's say we're going to have another guy named Jason, and then maybe Jamie, then gender is going to be female, comma, and so forth. Let's do one more. Alex, and maybe this person is non-binary. And then I can send item.name, and then item.length, not length, gender. And then make this, maybe I'll make it bigger. And let's see what's going on. And we created custom tags in generative fashion based on what's inside the array. So let's actually create some more. So let's say Jason, what are the good names? Jane, that's kind of boring, but that's okay. Bob, Lee, Yasmin. I'm going to use GTA's name, Viral. Okay, so, and then I have an error because I don't have the comma. Yeah, so this is how, array could be useful to generate multiple elements automatically. So let's say we want to filter out something, so filter is another function that could be useful for your homework. So filter is going to be array.filter, and then here you provide a filter function. So basically, you pass an element, and then if return is true, it means that that will be included in the new array. If it's false, it's going to be not included in the array. So yeah, one thing we can possibly do is let's get the, I don't know, female only. So I'm going to give a list of female only. Right now it has everything. But here what I'm going to do is, again, this is array, right? So I can put filter function here again. Oh, we'll probably do it here and then use map. So let's filter out stuff like those. So I'm going to give filter function. So I'm going to return true only when this particular object and then object's gender is equal to female. So it's going to be returning true. Otherwise, I'm going to return false. So if I do that, so here's the tricky part. So this is the original array, this is the array, but then filter is going to call this particular filter function per each item meaning this is the item first, like item 1, this is item 2, and then the parameter object is the first element, and then it's going to do something, right? And then if this filter function return true, that element is going to be included in the new array that is returned by filter. If it's false, that is not going to be that's not going to be included in the array. So this could be useful, like, you know, in assignment 4, you had this overdue or height completed project or something. So like those, basically it's like filtering out like some of the existing data from array. Okay, so let's save it and see what it does. Now I only see female, and then if I change it to male, I'm gonna get male data. If I change it to non-binary, I'm gonna get this 3 people. And if I do this, I'm just gonna get binary people and so forth. So yeah, okay, filter and map. Filter is filtering certain elements based on this filter function that you provide. And then it's gonna have the same format as with the existing array, which is why I used filter first and then use map later. Map is basically mapping one array to another, and then the parameter will be each element of the array, and then return value should be the translated array. So it could be something like, you know, it could be anything. Like you can have so here you can have like I, which is going to make italic, or B, which is going to make it bold. No, really? How about strong? No, maybe del, because we have bootstrap. Okay, so I didn't mean to offend any binary people, but you know, Okay, so that's that. So that's kind of a recap. Like this was kind of new. Let's say new. So next thing that we want to do is linking state and input form. So this is going to be interesting. So let's make it smaller. Let's have only 3 thing. And then I'm going to create a text area. So let me, okay. So let's name this as linking state. So this is the example that I'm going to create. So here, I'm going to create a functional component called linking state. And then let's return something. Hello. Linking state demo. Okay, so I'm gonna here have a demo. So let's say have a create. Let's have a text area or input type text, and then it has to be inside the quotation mark, and then I would have to terminate the element. Yeah, so I have this input form. Let's make it nicer, like look nicer by using Bootstrap components. Bootstrap style class name is equal to form control. And then it's gonna make look nice, a little bit nicer, except that now we have it's too large. So I'm gonna go to CSS, and then width is equal to maybe 80%, and margin it's gonna be auto, then so that we can have a nice thing in the middle. So here, imagine this is the Twitter input form. So one of the cool thing, not cool thing, I don't know, maybe one of the restriction of Twitter is that you can only have up to 140 letters, right? So let's simulate that. So what I'm gonna do is, I want to create like, you know, monitor, like, you know, the number of letter monitor. So here I'm gonna say div and number of letter is, let's say, length. And then we would have to create a state variable. So I'm going to use state. Again, you always have to use constant variable. And then I don't know, remember this assignment of array, len, and then set len, and then we got to use state, and then initially should be 0. And then it's going to complain about use state because we haven't included. So let's import it. Okay, so it doesn't do anything. So one thing that I would like to do, how can I make this number update? So let's, even before that, let's create something else. Like let's create a, just the mirroring of what's typed. So let's say what is typed so far is going to be, let's have another div. It's getting longer, but it's okay. And then let's say messages. Message meaning what's typed here. So here I'm going to create a message and set message. And then initially it's nothing. Oops, no string. So here what I'm trying to do is how can I connect this state variable with this input? How did we do it in jQuery? In jQuery, we used selector, right? But here, the whole point of React is not using selector because we don't want to be able to search anything to update or render anything, right? We want to be able to make it automatic so that React will update and render automatically whenever things change. So the way that we can connect these two is create a change handler. So change handler means that you want to, whenever the value of this guy changes, you want to update the state variable. So here again we are using event handling. So here typically you can do like things like onClick, but this time I'm going to use onChange. So whenever these things change, I'm going to call a function and let's say change handler, and then let's say message change handler. So I gave it the handle to the function, but I don't have the function yet, so let's create a function. And then basically this is a function, so event handler function, so it should be able to get event. And then what I'm going to do is to use this setter and then get the value of the current input. So how do I get the value? So it's going to be e.target.value. So e.target is the target of the event, and then e.target.value is the value of the target of the event. So if I do that, what's going to happen? So remember, this is whenever I type something, the value of this guy will change, and whenever it changes, it's going to update message state variable called message using this setter, and then this message has been used on here, right? So what I can do is type thing, and then this is going to be mirror. This is going to be the mirroring of what I typed. So, hey, I can type, and it looks like someone is mirroring me. So you see how this is exactly mirroring this. So here this is now much easier. So what I can do is, hey, instead of len, like creating another state variable, I'm just gonna use message, because message is the string, the links. So hello world. Now I am writing in it the state variable automatically updates due to the on change handler. I have a typo. And I can simulate Twitter, but not quite. So let's actually simulate the Twitter by, displaying the number of letters you can type more. So instead of this, let's say const cap is going to be 140. And this is going to be cap minus message.length. So hello, now I have a number of letters left remaining. Left. Hello world. I can type a lot of different stuff. It's going to go down, and then if I keep going, it's going to go to minus. And yeah. So let's say I want to change the color of this number whenever it goes down to negative. There are a few ways to do it. One way to do it is simply creating a separate variable or separate state, possibly. Well, a separate variable should be fine. So let's say if cap minus message.length is greater minus 0, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. Let num letter left. It's going to be nothing in the beginning, but maybe initially it's going to be this guy. I don't know, H4, H4. So you would have to use curly braces because it's JavaScript. But if this was less than 0, I'm going to replace this guy with some interesting thing. Let me make it italic. And how would I make it red? Let's say class name, and I don't know if you remember button danger, which is to make this thing red. Let's see if it works. This is coming from Bootstrap, by the way. So if I do that, and then now I'm going to use this guy. Yeah, it's going to add a line break because it's H4 header tag. So let's see. Okay, 140. I'm going to copy and paste. Yay. It's not quite what I wanted, but at least not bad. Okay, I can spend all day testing this. But so what's the other way to do? Let me do on a different way. So let me actually grab this guy. The other way to do it is use a conditional operator. So I don't know if you know this, but conditional operator is here. You can put Boolean statement, expression, and if whatever, and then put question mark, and then whatever comes here, if it's true, it's gonna pick the first one. If it's false, it's gonna pick the second one. So in this case, it's gonna be 3 because this is true. Let's say 3 is greater than 5. That's false, right? So that's gonna, let's say, true, yes, no, and then it's gonna pick no, right? So we can use this sort of expression. So what I'm gonna do is create Boolean expression first. And then Boolean expression that we want to do is this guy. So if this is less than 0, what I'm gonna do is use this guy with class name equal to btn button danger, or I wonder if danger works. Then we're going to close it. Oh, if not, well, by the way, we don't need this because we still need this. Okay. If not, we're just gonna use plain h4 tag without this class name. So let's save it. I have an error. This is not needed anymore. So I wonder if I can better accommodate this. So okay, so if this is true, it's going to print out this one. If not, it's going to print out this one. Okay, so let's do that. Oops, maybe class name does not work. Let's go back to button.danger. Yes. If I get rid of it, it's going to go back to normal. Yes. Okay. So this is kind of like a conditional rendering, and you can do a different way. You can even have like a if I don't know, if this is less than 0, and then you can simply return and say, hey, this is too much. So, and then if this if statement is true, it's going to return it, and so it will not reach this part. So let's save it. Okay, but now there's no way that I can go back because I lost input form. So it was not a good. It's not a good user experience. Like it's irreversible. Okay, so we still have more time. That's good. So this is conditional rendering that I was supposed to cover in the next slide. So you can use if statement, conditional operator works, more details are here, but this could be useful in terms of making changes, like like in the assignment 4, if you click it, you have to make it green. If it's overdue, you have to make it red. So those will be useful for changing the style depending on what it looks like, depending on the data. So next one is pretty important, lifting up the state. Okay, so far, I mean, let me do one more thing actually. So let me get rid of it before we move on. Let me because this is just simply checking the number of remaining letters, but it does not do sanity check, right? Like it's just giving the information to the user. But let's say you will still have to do sanity check when the button is pressed. So I'm going to create a button. Let's say, let's get rid of this button. Oh, actually, let's not get rid of it because I want to post it. Post this code. So let's say submit or tweet is the right word. And let's say what it's going to do is check, complain about the message. I mean, complain about the letter if it goes over. So on click, it's going to be submit or tweet message. So I'm going to have a function called, although I got it wrong because this has to be function handle. So it needs to be inside this curly braces. Function. Of course, you can do it in like on an easier way. I mean, you can define the whole function here like this. Let's do it in two different ways. So let's do this. So if this is clicked, what I want to do is check if this is less than 0. If yes, let's complain. Hey, it's too much. And then return so that I cannot fetch or make a cannot post and cannot make an Ajax score basically. Ajax score, which is a fake function at the moment, which is going to simply post it. Okay. So this is fake function. It does not make an Ajax score, but I'm just gonna assume that it does. So like now, if I have to it is posted, but if I go over here, go over like 140, so it's minus. If I tweet it, it's gonna say, hey, it's too much. So remember, like in the I remember the assignment 4, like when you press submit button, you had to do all the sanity check. When you do the sanity check, you were actually using selector to get the most recent value, right? But again, the whole point of React is not using selector. So the one way to do it is to create like a handler, change handler, and then keep updating the state variable. Another way to do it is create a reference. So there's a reference, you can create a reference and then refer the value whenever you need it, so that you don't have to search it whenever using the selector, because selector is basically searching it, right? Obviously, I didn't go over with reference. Another way is using reference, and I'm not gonna talk about it because it's probably too long. But if you're interested, you can check their website and documents. Okay. So What's next? Oh, this is supposed to be here. Though we don't have a space. So we found, in this case, we were using state variable and setter. So here, in this example, we can actually do this. I don't know if you have time. Let's have a zip code demo. How much time do we have? We have to do a few different things, but let's do this. Zip code demo. So, let's create a function, zip code demo, and then I'm going to create a, basically copy and paste this code. Zip code, this is state variable, this is setter, this is event handler. Initially it's nothing. And then it's going to check, like, I have a one input variable. Let's have a simple header so that I can tell what it is. Zip code demo, and then I wanted to put it under div because return statement can only have one element. I mean, there got to be only one top level element. So if I do that, hopefully it should work. Nope. That means the code that I have is wrong. So I'm gonna have to fix this. Did I save it? Okay. So zip code demo. So here, what it's gonna do is whenever the value changes, well, you don't really need this, but whenever value changes, it's going to check whether it is, so is_nan is not a number. So if this is true, that means it is not a number, so it's going to complain. So it's going to immediately complain if I start typing something that is not number. So that took a while to say. Saved it. Okay, so I'm going to say 9. Oops. Interesting. So why is it complaining? So let me put a breakpoint and then open inspector. And then type 3, and it got stopped. So let's evaluate each one of those. So zip code is nothing. Okay, so I see. One problem is this set state is asynchronous call. So set zip code, like the setter function is, I think, I just want to make sure that this is true. State setter is asynchronous. React is use state asynchronous. Synchronous. Yeah, so the reason why is that like you use the setter, but the actual state variable is not updated yet. So here I'm going to use target value instead. .length, which means that I would have to update the code here based on the assumption that is right. Okay. So let's check out the actual value in the input value. I mean, input form. And then let's see. So if I type, sometimes I don't know exactly why, but like sometimes these React, like, hangs. So this may happen to you as well. If that happens, simply just open a new tab and then just work on it, and then forget about the other tab. Hopefully you'll be able to close it later. So let's say 1, interesting, 2, 3. So let me actually 4. And then is none. This is false, meaning that this is true. Oh, so we should not actually have exclamation mark. So if this is not a number, we should complain, right? So again, this is what happens when you write code about only based on what you think, So let me refresh. I think this happens when you use inspector, and then when you refresh while the program was stopped. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to complain because it should expect 5 numbers for the zip code. What if I type E? Oh, not E is not a bad choice. So if I start A, B, C, it's going to complain, right? And then it's going to complain even when I delete it. It's not an ideal thing. So, but you can do this sort of sanity check when this thing is being submitted. So you can do button submit button. But here you should be able to do onClick event and then do some sanity check, which is basically almost the same, except it doesn't need to have the state variable update. And then here, the tricky thing is that I can get E, but E dot target is not this guy, right? E dot target is going to be the button. So this no more works. I should have, I should now use state variable. And then state variable, even though it's asynchronous, but it should have been updated. So here, this should work fine. And then let's maybe get rid of the, let's maybe check only when at the only at the end. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 1, 5, 2, 4, 5. It's not going to complain, but if I do 1E, like random alphabet, it's going to complain. And then if I have something more than 5 digits, it's going to complain, and so forth. Okay, so that is that. So a few more things that we want to do is lifting up the state. So in React, communicating downward is easy. Like, telling a child what to do is easy because you can send any kind of information using properties, right? And that means that, if parent changes, like parent change meaning that state variables will change. And if state variable could be used as props, the children that uses state variable will change as well, right? But how do we communicate upward? How can a child talk to parents? How can a child ask parents to do something? Or how can you communicate with sibling? Like, so what do you mean by that? Like, basically, it's like if I have something, like, there's no communication between sibling or nibbling. Nibbling means niece or nephew. So if I draw, if I have child, and parents, this is easy by props. So if props changes, it's going to re-render, right? But what if the child wants to re-render parent? Or if this child wants to make the other child re-render or other nibbling. So to be able to do that, this is easy because it's communicating downwards, right? But we need to know upward, like communicating upward. So we're gonna look at it. Look at this. So basically, this strategy is get a handler function as a property and call it whenever you have something to tell parents. Okay, so what does that mean? Let me create another demo. So here I'm gonna say lifting up state demo. Function. So by the way, typically, if you build a big app, big large scale app, you would probably want to have separate file for each component. But for the sake of convenience, I'm just going to put it on everything in app.js, and then I'm going to ask you to do the same thing for assignment 5. So yeah, so lifting up state demo is going to have of course, top level element, and then h1. Let's check. I would have to change the name. Okay, so this is going to be parent, and I'm going to create a two-child. So let's say font color, and then font size. Then I'm just going to make this another text, this div target target text. So what I'm going to describe, what I'm going to demonstrate is that create like two children and then have like input form that takes the color, and then another input form that takes size, and then change the style of this parent's text. So let's try that. How do I do that? So let's create a function. In function, and then return type color code. And then create an input type text. I'm not going to do any sanity check right now. Let me demonstrate what it is. And then let's forget the font size for now. Let's have one children. Input needs to be terminated. Okay, so it's a bit of a pretty messy, but hopefully you'll get the idea. Let's have some line break so we can see everything. So here, this is the thing that we want to do. And then if I type, let's say 112233, like this is hex code, and then I want to be able to change the color of the parent. So how do I pass this value to parent? One way to do it is, again, let's get this guy. So getter handler function as a property. So let's get a handler function. So I'm going to get a handler function. So hey, function handle color. And then this is simply going to be console.log, and then it's expecting a parameter, color code, and then print out color code. And then let's pass this function to child by props. So here I'm going to say change handler is equal to handle color. And then now this is available through props, right? So here what I'm going to do is whenever this thing change, I'm going to call that function. Props. Oh, I would probably have to have event handler. So let's say color code change. So I'm going to have a function. And then what do I do? I'm gonna have to get the event so that I can get the value, and then let's print out the value. Maybe alert the value. Target the value. And then what I'm gonna do is I have a handle to the callback function, or handle to the function of this parent function, right? So handle color is the function that this parent owns, and then now I have a handle to that function, which is props.change handler, and then I'm gonna actually send the thing, right? So, and then here is going to print it out, color code. It may not be color code, but hopefully it's going to print it out in the debug console. So just be aware that alert is inside the child, but console is inside the parent. So let's try that. Except we wanted to function change correct typo. Now let's open inspector. If I type something, it's gonna say D, but then it prints out D. So you see that parents, that the child gets it, but also parents gets it too. So what I'm gonna do is, what should I do? I'm just gonna get rid of this guy so that I can type without clicking the alert button. So I'm gonna check if color code length is 7, which means that, or is it 7? Yes, if it's 7, it means that it's going to look like something like this. Hex code 223344. For example, this is hex code. So this is RGB code, right? This is R, this is G, and this is B. So if I get 7 letter, I'm just going to assume that there's a color code, and then use it to change the color of this target text. So to be able to do that, I would have to declare a state variable, because without state variable, there's no way that I can update this HTML return value or JSX return value. So hey, I'm going to say color, comma, set color is use state, and initially 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, which is black, I think. And then use that color in as a color of this text. So how do I set that? So what's going on here? Okay, oh, constant. So, sorry about the mess, but like if I type something, you see this is like typing, but once I have 6-letter, I'm going to change the color variable with whatever that is available in the input box. Actually, this is not whatever is available in the input box. This was something that is passed by children, the child. So this was passed by the child. So that's actually what's typed inside this input box. This guy does not know anything about the input box, right? Okay, so that is that. So the only thing that I had to do is like use this color code inside this div. So to do that, I would have to look up React inline style color font color. So inline styling in React is very different. Like from inline styling in HTML, it would have to use double bracket. And then it has its own attribute name, like like we have a different name for onClick, different name for class. It has its own syntax. So color. Sorry about the noise, but basically it's trying to get rid of this dash and use it as a use something different, like like camel case. So let's actually use this. So what I'm gonna do, I think the right thing to do is style double curly braces, and then background color, and if I need double quotation mark, and then color code, which is this guy. So the reason why I can use this is because this is state variable, right? So maybe I have something wrong. Okay, now it looks like it's working. Cool. So even though that's not exactly what I wanted, maybe color should work too. Okay, maybe let's try. So 1 1 2 2 3 3. Oh, it's not working. Let's actually it should work. Maybe FF. So this is being updated, and I don't know why. Oh, it's gone. Okay, cool. 0000 FF. That's completely blue. FF0000. That's completely red. RGG. That means yellow. So it works. So maybe you can do another one. So let's maybe let's use existing demo. Hello world. Let's use hello world, but then I'm gonna use name, then give it a color. It's gonna be props color. So what I'm doing here is that I added one more attribute to hello world tag, like components. So here, let's just use black. Um, oh. So hopefully this will make sense once you have the code with you. It's hard to follow, but basically what I'm trying to do is, well, this looks exactly the same, but here if I provide different color, it's gonna be different, right? So what I was gonna do is talking to sibling. So in the lifting up state demo, this is like, this is the components that has input value. And then now we saw how fun, like this child could communicate with this parent by sending the handle to event handler. And then whenever something changes, like the child can call the event handler and it's going to call this function. And then now that we have linked this value with the state variable, and now what I can do is pass it to another child, which is sibling to the font color, using this state variable. So name is gonna be what's a good name? Tom. And gender is gonna be male. And then color is gonna be color. If I do that, now this guy, well, there's like, let me, very slightly went out over time, but this guy is this is the parent, and this is the parent element, and this is child 1, and this is child 2. So what I'm trying here is by typing this, I'm talking to parent, and then parent is talking to another child. So let's try that. So I'm gonna here I'm gonna say FM0000. Now the element inside the parent become red, and also this particular part in another child become red, which is a way to it's basically communicating upward. Like communicating downward, you can easily do it with props, but like upward, like if you have to be able to go upward to be able to talk to a sibling. So this will be useful. So for example, let's say in assignment 5, let's say you click a checkbox. And then clicking a checkbox means that you're going to update one particular item. And once you update the particular item, you have to tell the whole table that, hey, things changed. You have to fetch all the data again and then update the whole table. So in that case, you want to be able to communicate with the parent. So that's that. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it did. I hope, because this is recording, you should be able to review it again. And I'm going to post this code. Let me actually get rid of this VR line breaks and put it here. So, okay, so let me interesting. Yeah. Okay, so that's how it works, and it's pretty cool, right? So this is like the how React is very responsive. Like whenever you change it, it's automatically linked to multiple elements, and then like if it was jQuery, you would have to use selector and then pinpoint one element and then update the content. But here, there's no updated content. Everything is linked automatically as long as I specify the links between um, data and then HTML tag. The key way that the React does that is using this nice Colibre's JSX syntax, the being able to include JavaScript value or state variable or props inside this HTML. And then whenever this thing changes, because, you know, or let's say this guy, whenever this thing changes, because we use React, we ask React to keep track of state variables, which is called hooks, it is going to re-render or trigger render function automatically. So that's what's something that is happening under the hood, and we don't get to see that like in the code. But basically, somewhere in the React, they're going to call this function like this. And then that is going to return the HTML elements, and that's why it's going to update the new update the element with the new value. Okay, so let's briefly talk about what we didn't cover today. Use effect is another hook that is going to be useful for your assignment. So sometimes you want to do something after a component is rendered. It's kind of like document ready. Like you don't want to do something when the document is ready, but we can do the same kind of thing per component, right? So the way that React does is that it use effect is like another kinds of hook, and then it takes one parameter, which is callback function. So basically, this means that whenever rendering is done, it's going to call this function. So let's say document title is something that you see on top here, and then maybe you fetch the data, and then you know how many new messages that you have, and it's going to create this nice one dash. I mean, not one dash. The um, parentheses and number of message, something like this, right? So again, remember that this is going to be this callback function is going to run whenever rendering is done, which means you know it's something that runs pretty often, like depending on how you update the components. So there's different ways to control use effect. So let's say if you want to run only when certain value is updated, or certain state variable is updated, or certain properties are updated. So only the props and state can be used. But as a second parameter, you can provide an array of variables that you are going to monitor. So if these changes, is going to call this function. So you can imagine something like this, like, hey, I'm going to fetch data, but I'm not going to fetch data all the time. I'm going to fetch data only if this variable changes. So imagine that in assignment 4, we have this refresh button, right? Whenever we press refresh button, let's say we're going to increment this counter variable, which is state variable, which should be a state variable, and then use effect is going to call this callback function because count is changed. So it's going to happen like when rendering is done, it's going to check whether count is different from previous value. If it is different, it's going to call this callback function. And of course, you can provide multiple data, like let's say dirty could be maybe a Boolean variable, or maybe it could be color. Like there could be many different state variables inside this array. Another thing, if you pass an empty array, which means nothing, that means it's going to run only in the beginning. Only in the beginning in one time. It's almost like document ready, which is going to run initially. So that is use effect. I'm going to actually do some demo in next lecture for use effect, but this is going to be useful for assignment 5. Again, React is new to me, and I realized there are a bunch of different ways to create infinite loop in React because of this automatic connection between state and render function. Like if you update state, it's going to call render function, right? So if you set state inside the render function, it's gonna be keep running, like never gonna end. Like typically setter function should be inside some sort of callback function, right? Another way to create a infinite loop is having a state setter function inside use effect, because without the second parameter, use effect is going to run whenever rendering is done. So let's say whenever rendering is done, it's going to call use effect callback function, but if there's a setter function like state setter inside callback function, that's going to update the state, and then it's going to call the render function again, and then it's going to call the user effect again, and so forth. So make sure that you specify the second parameter when you have to set the state inside this use effect. Another thing, like fetch data in the top level. So let's say if you do fetch data here. So let's say fetch data is going to have some Ajax call, get, and then it's going to update set color in the callback function. So it's something like this. So let's say set color is going to be object data. So you can see how this can create an infinite loop. So initially, it's going to call this render function, right? And it's going to fetch data. And then fetching data, update the state variable, right? And state variable update is going to call render function again, which is this guy. And then it's going to fetch data again. Maybe it's updated. Like set state, so that like the variable is updated. Basically, no matter what the value is exactly the same or not, calling the setter is going to call the render function again. So it's like infinite loop. Like this one calls this guy, and this guy calls this guy. So you can easily create a infinite loop if you fetch data inside the top level. So you better put fetch data inside use effect, that is use effect callback, that is controlled. So use effect is going to be useful for fetching data. Okay, so even though I should demonstrate these 3 parts, technically these are all the things that you need for assignment 5, and then assignment 5 will be released today. The grade of assignment 3 is already released. Yeah, so logistically, I'm going to release some sort of information that you can anticipate your grade of the class by next Tuesday. Well, it's not going to be complete because assignment 4 has not been graded, but you can kind of guess how well you're doing based on the current, like, the score that you have so far, and then compare with this grading schema, and then like you can kind of guess how well you're doing based on the assumption, based on the assuming that you know how well you did in assignment 4 and how well you're gonna do in assignment 4. Okay, so other than that, I think that's it for today. Sorry for going over again. I think I went over 22 minutes, is that right? Oh, wow. Okay, so hopefully I'm gonna make up next time, by reducing the lecture. But yeah, I will try to keep in on time. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.